Good afternoon, everyone. By the way, my name is Alnor Marson from the ESED Science 2. Today, I will discuss the economic nationalism. So, what is economic nationalism? Economic nationalism's different problems were faced by the post-war Philippines. The post-war presidents faced a lot of critical issues such as collaborations and a problem of rehabilitation in the Philippines after the post-war. The collaboration issue was resolved by President Rojas in 1948 by issuing an amnesty proclamation for all the collaborators and war criminals. On the other hand, in resolving this issue with damage sustained by the Philippines during the war, the post-war president turned into an American for economic aids. So, after the after the kanang proclamations of economic nationalism, so the Philippines face a lot of critical problems such as collaborations and rehabilitating issue. Then this problem was resolved by by President Rojas in 1948 by 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 amnesty proclamation. Iyang giproclaim ang kuan nga collaborators to sustain or to resolve those critical problems and issues. The Bell Trade Act include parity rights, granting U.S. citizens and corporations equal to access and exploit the Philippine natural resources, which opponent argued violated in 1935 Philippine Constitution. Despite this opposition, President Manuel Rojas and Vice President Elpidio Quirino amend the constitutions and facilitate the post-war Philippines. So kini siya, the Bell Trade Act was kanang nag include ni siya og parity rights, equal which is equal access to or to exploit natural resources in the Philippines. So this act will help the Filipino to access equally in terms of natural resources. In 1995, the Laurel Langley are revised the Bell Trade Act, granting for parity rights to American for owning corporations and businesses in the Philippines. These agreements expired in 1975. The post-war economic climate was dominated by foreigners, particularly Americans. An initial criticism came from a small group of politicians including Senator Claro M. Recto and Carlo P. Garcia, who were often dismissed, even the President Ramon Magsaysay, who succeeded Rojas. So, the President Elpidio Quirino in 1953 was seen as too polite to the foreign investors and to the Americans. The criticisms of the Senator Recto and his speeches that the Filipino nationalisms lead to the enhancement of the retail trade in 1954, which took effect in 1964. Awakening nationalism law in 1954, Hico Garcia was capitulated to the presidency because of the death of President Magsaysay in the plane crash. President Garcia used in an era of so-called economic nationalism via the Filipino First policy, which tried to assert the rule of Filipino in economic sphere. So in this text, so when President Garcia kanang shining puli ni President Magsaysay kay during the death of President Magsaysay, so si Hico Garcia ang murag gipuli gicapitulated, and then when siya nakapuli na diri na niya murag gi-amend or yang gibuhat ang Filipino First policy, which is to try to assert the rule of Filipino in economic sphere. Next is the economic independence according to the 1935 Constitution. The Tidings-McDuffie law provided that the Philippines would be granted absolutely independence after 10 years Commonwealth transition period. Part of the articles of the law of the formulations of the Constitution of the Philippines in 1934. So constitutional conversation was summoned and the last for almost a year in 1935. A new constitution was ripened through the national plebiscites. The 1935 Constitution provide an article for economic independence of the Philippines. It also limits the ownership of land, business, corporations, and exploitations of the natural resources to Filipino citizens. The passage of the Bill Trade Act and later of the Laurel Langley Act would be force of government to amend the 1935 Constitution. The reading materials in the page was article of the 1935 Constitution. So when the act um when the act of Laurel Langley and Bell Trade Act was kanang na murag natapo na bitaw sila na kanang murag gikuan sila og base, which is to assert or to kanang to limits the ownership of land business corporations and exploitations of natural resources of all Filipino citizens. So the next one is economic nationalism through the Retail Trade Nationalizations Act of 1954 source. The growing criticism to the predominance of the American and the other foreigner and the Philippine economy during the post-war period lead to the passage of Retail Trade Nationalism Act in 1954. However, the law took effect 10 years later in 1964. All 11 more be noted that the Bill Trade Act and Laurel Langley Agreement was still satisfied until the 1975. So the reading materials below is an excerpt from the act. It provides protection for all Filipinos engaged in the retail businesses. It also provides that any license given to a foreigner to engage a retail business will be forfeited once the law takes into effect. Next is the Republic Act number 1180, an act to regulate the retail. So, Sector 1. No person is not a citizen of the Filipino and no association, partnership, or engage in retail business would be forfeited once the law takes into effect. So, moto kung gingon ganiya. Operations that capital of the which is not wholly owned by the citizens of the Philippines shall engage directly or indirectly to the retail businesses, provided that a person who is not a citizen of the Philippines, an association, partnership, and corporations not wholly owned by the citizens of the Philippines, which is actually engaged in the said business of May 15, 1954, shall be entitled to be continued to engage there useless its licenses for edited or Arcodenians heroin until he death voluntary retirement from the said business in the case of natural person and for period for 10 years from the date of the approval of this act. So, in this act stated that a person was kung isa ka sa mga foreign investors or mga kanang mga in other country nga businesses nga moanhi diri sa Pilipinas without license or without kanang let's say kanang license, without license dili sila pwede makapag-negotiate or makipag-associates or partnerships, so yes, to engage diri sa Philippines without the license. The license of any person who is not a citizen of the Philippines and of any association, partnership, or corporation not wholly owned by the citizens of the Philippines to engage in the retail businesses. So, those mga people nga without license or any persons that and not also as citizens of the Philippines are not wholly engaged in the retail businesses in the Philippines and shall be forfeited for a violence of any provisions of laws on nationalization, economic control, wage and measures, and labors and other laws relating to the trade, commerce, and industry. No license shall be issued to, to any person who is not a citizen of the Philippines, and to any association, partnership, or corporation not wholly owned by the citizens of the Philippines actually engage in the retail businesses to establish or open additional stores or branches for retail businesses. That's all for my discussion. Thank you and God bless.